Alright, today I'm in the process of changing a bearing bracket on the Mercedes-Benz 2011 2500 Sprinter van. As you can see, I've already got the new one placed on here. But real quickly, I'll catch everybody up to speed. To work on this, my bearing bracket actually fell apart. As you can see, belt was hanging out from underneath the van, no check engine light or nothing. I was able to pick up the part from Mercedes-Benz for I think $115. Since it was kind of hanging loose, I had a little bit of a fun time getting in the fan housing off since it was loose. The belt was hanging loose. But a couple real quick things. This is a left-handed thread, so we are able to unscrew this off the off of that pulley. The fan housing itself, when it's in the motor, it's got a couple clips right here. There's just two at the top on either side, the left and the right. Once you take the fan housing loose, the clutch fan, you unscrew it and you take these clips loose, and you can slide the whole fan housing assembly up. Now on mine, I did have to disconnect this radiator hose temporarily to slide it past that. So no big deal there. I'll just slip the hose back on. Once I did that, there's a the bracket itself. It's kind of funny. So this is the bracket bearing itself. This is where the clutch fan screws on, and it has two threaded holes in the bracket itself that this little auxiliary bracket attached to, if I can get my hand positioned just right. And all that does is this bolt from the intake manifold right here, it's coming from the intercooler back into the motor. Just that one bolt holds that little metal bracket. So what I found out is, I think you can take this out, and you don't even have to bother taking these off right now to get the old one off, to get the new one on. I think all that can be done. I did it after the fact, which is a little bit harder. But that's kind of where I'm at right now with this process. I'm starting the reassembly of everything. During the process, the belt tensioner that goes right here, I'll show that here in just a second. You know, everything's metric on these things. It has this star hex nut, and you can put your wrench on there and torque it back. But when I took the tension off of it, I realized the spring wasn't loading the tension back to it, and so I opted to go ahead and replace it. Since I got the motor toward this, you know, the front of the motor toward this far apart. Belts, I'm going ahead and replace them, both belts. I picked these up at Napa, and they got the heavy duty one there for the main primary, and I had to go to Advanced Auto Parts to get the auxiliary one. On my unit, on my vehicle here, it does have the rear air conditioner, so you can see the rear air conditioner compressor back here. It runs tensioner here, goes around this on the motor, and then around the clutch fan itself. So that's what all the auxiliary belt runs. The primary belt runs everything else. Not 100% sure what's what. It looks like the compressor for the air conditioner and the power steering pump. Looks like an idler pull. Oh, nope, that's the alternator, and that's probably the water pump. I'm not a mechanic, but pretty handy. Turning some wrenches. So that's kind of where I'm at with everything. Price wise, the tensioner at Napa was like $130. Belt was $25 at Napa Advanced Auto Parts, which it says CarQuest. Advanced Auto Parts owns CarQuest now. And then $45 for the heavy duty primary serpentine belt. So that's where I'm at with things. And reinstallation. I hope this video helps somebody, because I could not find a video for anybody that had to replace this bracket. It's called a bracket bearing bracket. And real quickly, before my battery dies, bearing bracket. A little blurry, but part straight from the Mercedes-Benz. Hope this helps. I also want to mention about this tensioner, which I didn't realize when I took it off. Anybody that's ever messed with tensioners, you know, you're basically ready to break a finger when you have to release the tension off of it. The Mercedes-Benz Sprinter one here, it actually has this pin and a little notch right here, so it'll only travel so far. But the brand new one, they put this pin in there. So for anybody that's actually working on them, just a word of advice: when you take the tension off of it, you stick something in this hole to lock it into the open position. Probably help you just a little bit. Wish I'd have known that. I'll have to be on the lookout for that anything in the future when I work on them. I did want to also follow up that the serpentine pulley that goes on here is pretty easy to take off and on. You have to use a screwdriver or something to kind of wedge it between the screws so you can put tension on there. Alright, here's the pulley that bolts on there. I wasn't quite sure if it, you might can get the bolts, these bottom ones out. May or may not. Of course, my whole assembly was loose, so I just took it off and took the bolts out of it outside the motor, and I put the other one back in with it off, of course, because I got the new one on the motor. But and I'll put this back on here in just a bit. But not knowing, I just wanted to make sure I had plenty of access to get to these. So you may or may not have to take it off before. And then you can see the grease on the inside where it slung it out. There's a regular ball bearing on the back, and then a needle bearing at the front of this. And of course mine broke. Okay, I've got the new tensioner belt tensioner put on. I haven't taken the rod out yet, but as you see, just note the orientation of the belt. Goes up and over. This is kind of a little funny idler pulley here, the way it is. The green, this is the heavy duty belt. Goes back over those, down over there, got a little pulley right there, and that's it. So I'm getting ready to put some tension on here, pull the pin out. I'd save that pin for future use. Alright, as you can see, I got the auxiliary belt on. Here's the new bearing bracket. Oh yeah, and the guy at the Mercedes-Benz dealer said that some mechanics call it the little water pump looking thing when they're calling the parts department. But either way, it's called the bearing bracket. I got the pulley back on here with the screws, and got the new belt. It goes down around the main crankshaft pulley, tensioner, down around the compressor, the auxiliary compressor on this particular unit. I do have the rear air conditioner, and then back up to another just an idler pulley. I'm gonna put tension on it, and then the spring tensioner itself, this was kind of weird. It's got a pivot point right here, and it's got like a shock on the bottom. And of course, I thank a gentleman that already posted a YouTube video, but since I'm doing one, figured I'd go ahead and add it to my video as well. That's what it looks like. That's why I say it's a shock looking thing. It's kind of weird. It's got the pulley up there, the pivot point right here that I was telling you about, and then an anchor point down here. And you can see it's got like a little bushing, or like a little compression boot on it. One thing that I did, which was kind of hard to do, you gotta take a screwdriver, put it right there, and then you're pulling down. It almost feels like you're going to break it. But I'll put a little tension on there, and you can see it compressing just a little bit. Now the funny thing about mine was, when I compressed it, it doesn't seem to want to release. So what that tells me is, if you look up here at that belt, see that tension? It's got like no tension on it. So I had to smack it with a hammer. Oh, you see, I could push it and get it back in its like sweet spot, and then like tense up a little bit. So that tells me I'm gonna be replacing this here pretty soon. I don't have the part with me now, but as you see, it's all under the engine, so I'll just come back later and replace it. Well, I know I'm kind of doing this backwards, but it's like any project. You want to get started, and then after the fact, I'm thinking, maybe I should make a YouTube video on this, on how to work on this. But either way, I'm kind of finishing things up now. So I do have the shroud back on. A little bit of a pain in the neck. Like I said before, I had to take the top radiator hose loose just for a brief second to get this bracket to get past it. And down at the very bottom, can't see it. Yeah, can't see it. Dead center of the shroud, there's like a little piece that goes down, and it's got a little slot that it locks into. That's probably the most aggravating thing for me, is to get that to lock back in while trying to keep these two clips from the top clipping in at the same time. But I got it. Did basically everything by myself here. It's got this little cover that goes over this little gap right here. But obviously, you know, most of this stuff, if you're willing to tackle something like this, you know how to take the air cleaner off, so I'm not going to tell you how to do that. If you can't figure that out, you probably don't need to be working on something, I wouldn't say difficult, just time consuming. You know, I took my time on it. I spent probably 3 or 4 hours on it. I wanted to make sure I paced myself. I didn't get frustrated with it. I wore some gloves, so I kept my hands nice and clean, and I didn't break any fingers or cut myself, so that's a good thing. But if you like this video, if it was helpful, like the video. I don't have very many YouTube videos on here, but if you like it, lets me know it helped you out, and give me the gumption to make more of these as the time passes when I go to do them. Thanks and good luck.